Hello, my name is Lucas, and this is part 2 of building the Tamiya Grasshopper. Okay, so last time we built the full rear axle, and now we're going to finish off the rear end by attaching it and then doing the rear shock assembly. Alright, so the parts you're going to need for this is the chassis, because we're going to be attaching it, the chassis braces, which should look like this, the motor, of course, the rear axle that we built, 2 shock springs. Now, I saw that there's 2 different sizes of shock springs, one of which is smaller diameter, one of which is a little bit larger diameter. You're going to want the larger diameter shock springs. You're going to also need these 2 shock bodies and some shock caps, which should look like this. And then you are going to need the motor cover, which should look like this, and the motor adapter, and then finally these 2 adapters, which will put the rear axle onto the chassis. Alright, so last time I said that you could use scissors to cut the parts out of this, but I actually found that the twisting them actually works better. So now that we've got all these parts cut out, let's start off by getting the motor mount. Which should have it shouldn't be a full circle, it should have a little indent. And you're gonna wanna go to parts A and grab the two black screws in there. So there should be stubby and there should be 2 of them. Now set that on the table. And you should also have a bunch of little nuts in there. Now there's 2 that are bigger than the rest. So those are the 2 we're gonna be using for this assembly. So this bag and those are the nuts. Okay, like these. Okay, now what you're gonna want is grab an adapter like this, take the nuts, one of which is there and then the other is here, so those 2. And you should notice that on the smooth side, this side, that there's 2 indents. They're perfect to fit the nuts. So insert the nuts into there. And then after you do that, take your time, make sure it all fits in well, because this will be helpful in a later step. It should look like that. And then you are going to grab the motor and slide it in, and then line up the holes, all lined up. And then you grab the 2 screws, make sure you get lined up. Sometimes the nuts, actually, never mind. You actually want to do the mount opposite, so the smooth side is facing the motor. So just want to do that. So you're going to grab the motor, smooth side facing, stick it on, get it lined up. It's always helpful to go like this so your screws don't fall out. So now just set them in, the holes. And now with that done, you're going to have to grab your screwdriver and just screw it in. You only want to screw it part of the way, and then you can screw it the rest of the way later. Get that in, grab the other one, stick it in, and tighten it all up. Tighten that. Just sometimes you line it up right. So just make sure it's all lined up. Sometimes it's always good to look before you put the screws in to make sure it's lined up. And then if it's not, you can loosen the bottom one and get it so it is. So now grab the screw, and now that I relined it up, and now the screw should go right in. And then now that I've got that, tighten both fully. And now while you do that, because the motor has magnets, you might have to put those back in. So if you have to, you can loosen those screws back up because sometimes the washers and nuts will fall out. So don't fully loosen these screws, otherwise it'll keep happening, but just enough so you can slide the nut in. And then once you've done that, promptly go back and tighten up the screws so they don't fall out. Then, once you've done that, then make sure they're all tight, make sure the nuts are in there, because if they're not, it won't attach to the axle. So with that done, it should look somewhat like this. And then you're going in, the axle should have on one side this little pattern, on the other, this thing where we put a screw in. So what you're going to want to do is on the side with the pattern facing you, so you want to go on the other side of the pattern, the one with the screw, sliding them out with the nuts, where the nuts are attached to, line up with these two holes. So you just slide it in, and then you're going to hold that there, and then you can make sure it's all aligned, and you should, after that's aligned, go and grab the screws from bag C. Go to bag C. There should be 2 long silver ones. Now these are the ones you're going to want. And now with the motor aligned with the nuts and the holes, you're going to grab the screw, slide it in, and then tighten. Oop. You actually want, I didn't say this, but you want this part where it's not the full circle, pointed towards the rear of the axle. That should slide in like that. Then, again, making sure they're aligned, grab the nuts, push it in, and just make sure it threads. Then, take your screwdriver and just thread it in part of the way, not all of the way. Then you could get stuff misaligned. Then after you thread that, get the other one, and then making sure it's aligned, stick it in. And the other reason for not fully, so you want to stick it in, and you'll kind of feel it thread, and then it'll go down there, feel it thread, and then with that, you thread that in a little bit. But now, oops, not threading, so you want to make sure, oh, there it goes. You want to make sure you feel it threading. And now this is a little bit tricky. You are gonna, actually, never mind, this is not actually tricky. The mesh is set for you. I was gonna say you have to set gear mesh, but you don't. This is a simpler, that spacer that you put on is actually setting it for you, which is pretty handy. So if that screwdriver isn't working, you can grab a larger one for more leverage and tighten them down all the way, because you don't want this coming out. Actually, I forgot a step. You actually, with this, you're going to want to put on the gear cover. To be careful, I accidentally forgot that. You want to put on the gear cover over this so dirt doesn't get in your transmission. So loosen those screws back up. And then, so with this loosened, you're going to want to take the screws back out all the way. But if you can, kind of hold the motor in position to the axle so it doesn't come out of position. So just unscrew those. If you have to, you could use the screwdriver. If you don't have to, you could just use your hands to unscrew them. Now with that unscrewed, pull the screws out. And then you can even pull the motor out if you want. And then you're going to want to grab this piece. It should look like this. You're going to thread, just push the screws through. They should just slide right through. And then with that, push through. You want to now go back to the motor again with the like half moon face toward the outer side of the axle. Push it in, and then get it all aligned. So make sure it's aligned. Slide it in. So it should slide in. There you go, make sure it's aligned. And tighten one to start off. And then tighten that down, tight as you can make it. Then after that's tight. Oh, didn't thread, so you gotta make sure you're going to get it just right, so it's threading. So you can, how you can check is by going on the nut side, where you should see a nut, and seeing if you see silver starting to fill in. So now that I do, I know it's threading, somewhat at least. And I should now able to tighten it down. And it's not going in all the way. So you might want, if this happens to you, you can always flip this around, because sometimes when you pop these off, like I said, of the twisting, sometimes you can twist it and some of the plastic stays on. Sometimes you can reverse it, and that can sometimes help with building these. So you want to take the motor again, it's aligned. So now it should go in, and for some reason mine is not working, and I believe this is the longest screw that's in there. So what you can also do is, so you want to make sure when you do these, when you pull the parts off of the grid, that you pull them off very carefully, so you don't do this where your part will have some plastic left on it. So if you can see my part, I have some plastic left on where the screws is, so they just can't go all the way in. So I'm good for, you don't want to do this. So if this would happen to you, you could spend some time scraping it off. But for now, I'm just gonna put it on without the dust guard, but just so then we can start moving on to the other steps. But normally you would want to take this and spend your time fixing the dust guard, because you preferably, if you're running in dirty places, would not want to let the dust get into the gears, because it could lead to stripping. So gotta make sure these are aligned, because I did not get my gear aligned. Take the screw out. Sometimes these can be a little bit tricky, so you definitely want to be careful. And get these in well. Do this nicely, so you can grab the next screw, slide it in, just make sure it's aligned. You should feel it. Then tighten it down as far as you can go without breaking the threads. So now, after you finish tightening the screw, you have fully assembled the rear axle. So that's good. So what you want to do, now we're going to attach it to the chassis. So this is getting exciting. The car's going to start looking more like an actual car. So taking the axle like this, you want to have the axle having let's see. So what's the orientation of this? Like this, should have the rear of the chassis. So the chassis goes like this. You want to assemble it like this. So the chassis is right now upside down. So you want to slide this. You should see there's a little indent here. Just slide it in like that. And then once you've done that, you grab these two pieces, which look like this, and they should slide onto the ends Then should be able to slide them on. Just slide them onto both ends, making sure you do them right. And then go on the other side. Might actually be easier doing this. Oh, I figured that out. They actually slide into here, I believe. So then this should should slide into here. Now this could be a little bit tricky because it is a little tight. So again, if you need help, you can ask an adult for help. That's always a good idea if you can't get it in. So this is another one. Just slide it in. Sometimes you have to wiggle a little bit, it will go in. So just kind of wiggle around and try to get it in. Can take a minute, but better to take a minute now and get them fully in and worry about it later. So if you have to, you can grab something like your screwdriver and kind of push out on the hole, which could kind of pull it out a little bit and help it guide it in a little bit better. So now, went in, it's a little bit tight, so they should be now like that. And then you would grab the axle. Actually, never mind, you have to have one of them out. And you're gonna take the axle with this mount, you're gonna slide it into one. And then you're gonna go to the other, slide it in. And then you're gonna take that and put it into the hole. And it should go right in. Might, again, didn't do this perfectly right. You want to actually start them on the outside rather than on the inside. And then you gotta slide one in. Be careful, slide that in. Go to the other one. And it's a little tricky. This is it's very tight putting this together. But it definitely helps when you actually assemble this, have them have a tight fit rather than a loose fit. So it's always good to be tighter than looser on this. This is how your whole car goes together on the rear. We'll push it in and get it in. So it's a little bit hard and tricky. This really is super hard to do. So keep trying till you get it. It might take a couple tries. So bear with me while I fit this together. So just let's see if we can get it in. So I'm gonna actually try a different approach and try putting in the harder side that fits a little tighter in first, and then putting in the other side. So lining it up, gotta put that one in, slide it in, and then with some luck, you'll get it in just like that. And now I actually recommend that, since sometimes one side will be a little harder, because like I mentioned about the gear cover, sometimes the plastic, when you rip it out, it won't be super smooth. So that'll help if you kind of do the rougher side first to shove in. So now with that shoved in, you're gonna want to get screws from bag B. It should just be the normal screws, bag B. And you're gonna want to screw in on the bottom, put 4 of them, you need 4 of these. Grab 4 of them, and just put them in on the bottom. And then with that done, you're gonna grab your screwdriver and just tighten them down. All the way, making sure that these are tight. Sometimes it's helpful to have a bigger screwdriver. You have more leverage. So just tighten them down, take your time. Again, emphasizing you don't want to tighten them too much, because then you can strip out threads. So once you feel like you can't really tighten them anymore, then you could stop because that means they're as far in as they're gonna go. They're really tight. So we'll continue screwing them in. And get to finish. So again, a lot of repetition on these, which you will notice more throughout the car. So it's actually good because then it's just one thing over and over again. So it's not super hard or complicated. It's repetition. So it might be a little challenging to get these screws in, but no big deal. Just take your time, put some pressure, and I like tightening them most of the way, and then going back and finishing them off as far as you can later. Like, not later, but after you finish tightening them off most of the way. So, going back to the first one and finishing tightening them off, so. Tighten that one, tighten that one. Now I'm gonna finish this one. Just tightening them, and sometimes it might be good to put a little pressure forward on them because sometimes they don't like to line up perfectly. So just finish off tightening them, and then you've got on the rear. So now you'll notice low floppy, and that's because we need to do the chassis braces. So that's gonna fix that. So what we're gonna wanna do, keep it flipped over. I don't know why I flipped it over, but you wanna take these, and these should attach like so to the rear axle. So this should, let's see, where did these go in? Let's see. So in the instruction, flipped over. Ah, no time. So I wanna attach it like this. Let's see. How do these attach? This might be a little complicated, bear with me. Alright, so this is one of them. So it attaches here, so we want to go to bag B. Grab one of these screws, and it should attach a little indent here. So now we're going to take the screw and tighten it down. Can't do it, get a little bigger screwdriver and have a little more leverage. Screw it all the way in. Tighten it down, it should go all the way. Then you want to grab the other one, should be the opposite. Push it in, same indent, but just on the other side. And then you're going to grab another one of those same screws from bag B, looks like that. You'll want to stick it in. Tighten it up, get that just lined up, tighten, as tight as you can get it. Then once you do that, you should go over to this side and pop this chassis brace in. It should just, there's a little hole like that. You should just be able to pop it in. It might be a little challenging, but it should be able. Oh, actually, I was wrong here. You actually want to do these reverse. So the hole on the chassis brace actually is a screw. So you want to reverse these. Actually want to put these other way around so they screw in on both sides. So I'm going to take these off quickly. And go switch this around. We have it the right way, so you can actually switch these around so that you should see a little hole. So that one you want to face onto here. So that I actually made a mistake there. So you're going to push that in. Again, I'm going to tighten it down. It's the same place that I did last time, but just other way around. So tighten that one all the way down. Then after this, I'm going to tighten the other one. Then, okay, I'm going to grab the same screw that did the last one. I just reverse these around. I'm going to tighten this one down. Okay, and now you're gonna grab another bag B screw. Grab 2 more of them. Should be the same as the last ones, just these. And then you're gonna go, since I reverse them, like I said, the hole that I thought would pop in, it's actually a screw instead. So I'm gonna just screw those in. Yeah. So I'm just gonna screw that in. Just tighten it down all the way. And after you're done, it should look like so, right there. So now I'm gonna do the other side, and then we'll be done with that. And this is where things get exciting. This is where we get to actually start assembling the rear shocks. After we finish tightening down the screw. So now that we have attached the rear axle and done the chassis braces, we'll flip the car over and we're gonna go flip the page on the manual and we're gonna assemble the rear shocks. Okay, so now what you're gonna wanna do, you wanna grab your shock body, doesn't matter which, so you can grab that, and then you're going to want to grab a spring, push it over like this, and then you're going to want to grab the screw from bag C. You should have 4 of the really long ones. You're going to need 2 for now. It should look like so. And then you can grab it, stick it through, just slide it in, and then it should slide all the way in. Grab your screwdriver, always helpful, just kind of push it in. Then, now with that done, you can grab one of these caps and it should look like this. There's 2 different ones, one of which does not have the hole and one of which it does. You want to take the one that does have the hole and just kind of thread it on. Sometimes it's easier to actually use the screwdriver to screw it on. Well, get that and screw it on. Let's see, how does this one go on? I'm gonna actually, instead, actually now I'm gonna have to use this. Good. Sometimes a little tricky because the screw is black, so you want to make sure you're threading it. Just screw it on, and then it should go on pretty far. And now you have your shock assembled. So it should go like this, and then you're gonna want to take the cap that doesn't have the hole and just slide it on as hard as you can. Just push it on and push it. Okay, get it on. If it doesn't go all the way on, it's gonna be okay because you can, when you screw it on, it'll do the rest. Now, I'm gonna take the shock and it should look somewhat like this. and then you're going to take the shock and you're going to build one more of them because you need 2 for the rear. So again, we're going to take the screw, holding this like this, gonna stick it through, just keep it on, grab this, just stick it in. Let me stick it. Okay. Now grab the spring, stick it on, and then grab the cap, and just push it, and then while holding the cap, screw it on, so making sure it's aligned, screw it on. It's a little tricky to hold it and get it on, so it might take a try or two to get them, but once you get it, it should go on. So just, you need to do it again and grab it. Also, another helpful trick that I said before, you can always grab a screwdriver and kind of push it in to make the hole a little bit wider so you can get it out. So it's a little, slides in easier and comes out a little bit better. So now you can just screw it on and should be good. Then cap, thread it. If you're having a hard time getting this, you can always ask someone for help, because it can be a little bit tricky to do. So just turn it on, and then grab the cap and stick it on, and as far around as possible. And then now we can put the rear shock on the car. And to do this, you are going to want to, so the shock should look somewhat like this. So now to do this, we're gonna need to go to bag B and grab, let's see, 2 screws for bag B. And then it should look like so. And let's see, which screw is this? Then we're gonna go to bag D, and we should get 2 of these silver washers like this. See these silver ones like this. Get those, and then we're gonna need from bag D 2 of these copper ones, which should look like this. And then we are going to need from bag A 1 of these washers, 2 of them actually. Grab 2 washers from bag A, and then be careful not to drop them. And then you're also going to need from bag C 2 screws. There's 2 of these. Should look like this. And then from bag A, no, you should get 2 nuts from bag A. Should look like this. Actually, no, those are not the nuts. Let's look for the nuts. I have actually, never mind, you don't need those nuts. So you're gonna want to take the shock and the shock like this, and so you're gonna want to go to this hole and grab the silver washer, one of these, and I dropped it. One of these, and then what you can do with that, you're gonna grab from the bag B screws, one of these, just stick it through, and then you're going to go and wait a second. Actually, you don't need the silver ones. You actually need the copper ones for this. So grab the copper, slide it through the bottom of the shock, and then screw it on to the car. So I'm just gonna careful to line it up. It should screw on and stop. And then once it's tight, stop screwing. Once you can't screw anymore. And then you can go to the top, and you should, let's see, how does this go? Should be able to push it through, and then you should grab one of these, which should look like this, and a screw. Grab a copper nut, stick through, just slide it on like so, and you can tighten that down. Actually, wait. I actually want this copper one to go on the inside of the shock. So you want to push that back out and then slide it through the top, then push back under and in. So it should look like that inside. And then you're now going to grab the screw, stick it through, make sure to get it all good. So you grab that, stick it through, you can tighten it up. Just take your time, get it in, and sometimes, let's see, it's not wanting to go in. So if this does happen, just keep trying to get it threaded, but for now I want to move on so we can finish this step, and I'll do that one later in my free time. I'll finish it. So now going on to this shock, we're going to want to take it, put a copper of these through the bottom, and then you're going to grab the screw, grab the screw. Actually, you could, for the bottom one, insert the copper tubing into the screw first, and then like that. And you grab that, stick it into the same hole, but just on the other side. And then tighten it up all the way. Tighten it. It might fall because it's a little tight fit, a little small squeeze, but keep trying to get it and tighten that up. This thing keeps coming apart. You gotta be careful not to hit the shock on the actual axle, because that tends to mess things up. So let's see if we can get it. Very careful. But that's actually a good tip. So what you want to do, I just figured this out. You want to actually tilt the shock back towards the rear of the car while you're tightening the bottom screw, so then you're not touching the axle as much and interfering with it. So tighten it down a little bit more. Just get it nice and tight, as tight as you can get it. And then once that's all tight, here we go, lift it up, grab one of these copper, one of these, stick it through, and stick this screw through. And then, actually no, you don't want to stick the screw through, you want to leave the screw, push this under and up, then stick this in and screw it in, and then once that's all done, your whole shock assembly is done, and now you have a completed, finished rear end attached to the front end. Thank you for watching. I hope I see you on one of my next videos.